Hi, and welcome to another episode of Nursing Your Way to Wealth, where a mental health nurse and an accountant talk about wealth creation, personal development, and financial independence in the UK to help you live the life you deserve. Today on the show, there's Alex and I. We're both back, and today we're going to discuss impulse spending. It's something that I think is really prevalent in the current climate, financial climate, and it's something that both Alex and I have been a victim of before. We've learned a little bit about it. We're going to talk about a bit of the science of how it works in the brain and what we're up against, and also give real world examples of how it's affected us. And we'll talk about some tips that we've used to help combat that as well. Okay?
Yeah, hey Alex, and hi everybody. So I'll start just off the bat with some of the things I've been guilty of impulse spending on. So one is Amazon and books off Amazon. I get it kind of can go down the rabbit hole where you search for one particular book and then they've got, you know, readers also bought X, Y, and Z. And if I find myself after 20 minutes having about 15 books in my basket and having to cull my basket down or save it for later so I'm not spending like 100 quid on books. Um, so that's one thing where I do find myself buying things where I didn't expect to buy them. The other thing I get, and it'd be good to get your viewpoint on this from a psychology perspective, but and I say less frequently certainly now, but what I used to get a bit more guilty of is finishing work and on my way back to the train station, you pass a couple of pubs and you might, I'd go in and have a swift pint before going home. But or similarly at the if it's a weekend and I quite fancy a pint, even if I've got a beer in the fridge, sometimes we'll go out to the pub. And I think there's something underlying there psychologically, which those are the two things that stick out for me as being big impulse purchases. So yeah, how about you? What have you been guilty of impulse spending on?
I mean, for me, that's firstly very honest of you, and we'll dig a bit on the certainly the Amazon books, and especially that save for later button. It enables the brain to then switch off from that difficult decision because putting something off is always easier for the brain than doing it now, which is basically procrastinating. And for me, I find I'm not particularly an impulsive person. Whether I've managed to deal with it quite well recently, that's a different thing. I have been impulsive in the past. I often find I can be impulsive around buying food, like grocery shopping, something like that. I always write a list of things, and my wife and I we use an app to both add things to this list. And I always say, if it's on the list, I don't care how ridiculous it may seem, I'll buy it. And if it's not on the list, I won't, and I'll forget all about it. Even if you remind me 2 minutes before I leave to go to the store, if it's not on the list, it's not coming home with me because I just simply forget about it. So often I get sucked into the something's on the end of an aisle. The price says it's a discount or whatever. It may be not. I don't know. And then my brain will be like, oh, actually, do it, buy it, put it in, and then put it in the basket. And then by the time it's in my basket, I'm really unlikely to take it back out and traipse all the way back over to where it goes. So at that point, then they've got you. And I read somewhere that most supermarket sales have come from the end of aisles. I might have made that up, but I feel like I've read it. So that's something for me. I'm not particularly. I wouldn't class myself as a spender, and I don't have any vices particularly, except for coffee, as we've discussed. But the impulse spend is massive business for companies. They employ an awful lot of psychology experts and sales teams, marketing, etc. Is all built to create a need, fulfill a need, and part you with your cash, sometimes within seconds. And that's really the nature of impulse spending. And I just wonder, Alex, about the beer on the way home from work. I mean, you've obviously worked really hard. Your brain's been taxed quite a lot throughout the day. So probably when you walk out the door, you feel a bit of relief because you're done for the day and you can forget about it until tomorrow, hopefully. And then you walk past a pub. I know we've talked before about you walking quite a long way kind of to and from work and trains and things like that. But if you took the train, you'd be less likely to get the beer. There's a thing there as well. But say you walk past a pub, your brain's thinking, oh, Alex, I'm tired. You've worked me really hard today. I just need to relax. Beers helped me relax before. Therefore, you should get a beer. And that's your brain will do all of that within half a second. As soon as you've seen and visualized the pub, you look at people inside, outside. Probably they're having an okay time. It's probably worse when the sun's out and it's not raining. And it creates this sense of occasion that having a beer in a pub, in that surrounding, around other people, is very different to having the beer at home. Would you say, I mean, these are obviously only my thoughts, are they, is that somewhat right, or am I way off in your real world example?
That's really interesting because it is that's exactly it. It's there to relax, and I think it's just that association of you finish the day, you feel good, you feel you know you feel like you want to reward yourself. I talk as if I do this like every night. I really don't, but it's um it's certainly one thing where I can catch myself being like, oh yeah, I really fancy a beer now, and it's probably that self-justification of I've worked hard, you've just finished up. Usually in the nice weather, people are in good spirits, and it's probably just a way of trying to boost that or elongate that feeling of elation. Elation is a strong word, but happiness of not of kind of finishing off for the week. So yeah, it's definitely, I think, exactly as you said, and it's quite crazy to think how fast the brain associates lots of different things together so quickly to then make you purchase something. I would say as well, grocery shopping, I very much on your page with a list and things go on the list. The only things that if they're not on the list are things if they're on like yellow label discounted and I know that I'm going to buy them at some point in the future, then they'll go in the basket. But yeah, I'm a slave to my shopping list as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I am a mental health nurse is because the brain is absolutely fascinating to me. We, as a collective human society, we know more about outer space than we do our own brains, and we live with them every day. The more I learn about it, the more it fascinates me. And I don't feel like we've even touched the surface of what our brains are capable of. And I mean, one of the lectures I had, this is a long time ago, 5 years ago now, one of my medical lecturers said that the brain has the consistency of toothpaste if you poke it. And I was like, surely it's like a sponge, right? And he was like, no, it's toothpaste. So that again fascinated me. Why he's poking holes in a brain, I don't know. But it's just another one of those things that is totally backwards to me. I would have never said a brain's got a texture of toothpaste at all. But thinking about how it works and creating its own thoughts, humans and our own brains will justify anything to ourselves if we want it. So I can justify to myself that it's perfectly okay to have a beer in the morning on the way to work. It's really not, and I know it's not. But some people's brains do that, which is why you'll find people drink more on a Friday than they would a Monday because it's the end of the working week. You've worked really hard, da da da. You deserve a reward, etc. And humans really that power to self-justify your own behavior is something. It's a phenomenon that I don't think will ever go away. It's justifying whatever purchase you could possibly make if you can afford it, or even if you can't and you need to use a bit of credit for it or a lot of credit, who knows. Your brain will find a way of dampening down those ill effects, and broadly we call that like damage reduction or painful thought reduction, also known as tolerance for things. So you tolerate, say, alcohol in one way, but you also tolerate poor decisions. So they become less problematic for your brain. And it's just simply a way of your brain getting along with itself and not questioning itself so much, because that would probably drive someone crazy. I mean, thinking of that pathway a bit in the brain whilst I'm on one, it's the impulsivity part of it is managed by your prefrontal cortex, which is it's the front bit of your brain behind the top of your forehead, so above your nose towards the top of your hairline if you have one. It's around there. And there's an interesting story of a man in, I think it was the something 50s, maybe 40s, 50s. He worked on the railway, had a catastrophic accident, and he ended up with like a spike of metal. I think it went up through his chin and out the top of his head and like cut that piece of his brain up. And he survived, not for a huge amount of time, but he survived. But his impulsivity, his decision making, his ability to feel rewards, pleasure, pain just disappeared totally. He could subsist, but I wouldn't call that living. I don't remember the chap's name. I should have looked it up beforehand. But it's a fascinating story of that part of the brain. If that's not there, we essentially become zombies, which is why head injuries can be problematic. And last thing from me before I pass back to you, but thinking about that reward center in your prefrontal cortex is something that we use all day, every day. It's hyper used, I think, in this current society where everything is quick. Nobody waits for anything anymore by design. And it's something that is you can learn to manage it as best you can. There's no quick fix for it. It's repetition of positive behaviors to allow you to become more comfortable by going against what that part of your brain wants. But one of the best books around that part of the brain, and the chief chemical here is dopamine, which is your happy reward chemical. That book's called Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lemke. It's a really, really good book on how that part of your brain works, just to delve a bit into it. It's super. I mean, A, have you read it? And B, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've not actually read it, and it's on my list of non-impulse and planned book purchases. And there's some really interesting things that you said there, and I think one is this with impulse spending. I think there's any website, any shop, any system is there to make you part with your money faster and more efficiently than ever before. So the advent of on Amazon, just one-click buys, having all your payment details stored on your iPhone, so you just have to put your thumbprint or show your face to fill out your credit card details. And even and I really like that thing of, your brain will justify anything to yourself. And if you look now at you've almost got super optimized websites to make you buy more, but also now coupled with the introduction more so of the like buy now pay later services, impulse I guess for me, impulse spending used the first thing that comes to my mind is quite small, quite cheap things. So I like a packet of chewing gum at the supermarket checkout type thing. But actually now you're looking at you could easily impulse buy hundreds of pounds worth of whether that be clothes or I don't know, could be anything. And you now just have the ability to sign up within a few clicks to pay for that over time. So you immediately then put into debt, and these quickly get on top of you. And it's that toxic mixture of you've got this super efficient machine to help you get your money out of you quicker, and then also this other thing now layered on the top. Not only that, but you can spend more than you were going to spend because you know you can now spread your cost over 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. So that's kind of the way I see it is impulse spending is almost getting is much harder to resist. Is kind of what I'm seeing from yeah, exactly what I'm seeing.
And you are right. I think the chief thing there is removing friction and barriers from parting people with their money. I think if you think about contactless spending, that's been probably a massive creator of parting people with money because you don't any longer have to remember a PIN number. So that's another thing that can disappear out of your head. I mean, I haven't used my bank PIN number for at least a year now. And at the time when it always asks you to put your PIN number in, I have to actually think about for a couple of seconds and think about what my PIN number is because I just don't store it in my short term memory anymore.
That exactly happened to me at the supermarket the other day. They asked for my PIN number, and I had to go into the app to get it because similar. I just tap for everything.
Yeah, and I think it's something that it happens to everyone. And I like you, I really struggled with it. I had to log into my app and then do the thing to show your details, reveal PIN, etc. In the middle of a store because it just doesn't come to my mind. But ask me that 5, maybe 10 years ago, and it would have been rapidly done, and my muscle memory would have sorted that and job done. But do you remember there's a couple of good examples here of the impulsivity and some things that have worked and some things that haven't. So do you remember or have any memory of the Amazon Dash buttons where they used to sell? I mean, these were discontinued in 2019, but they used to sell a little physical button that was linked to your Amazon account and linked to one particular product. So when you need that thing, say it's, I don't know, toilet roll or shampoo or whatever, it's whatever object you need, you just push the button and it will order one pack, one box, one order of that, and it'll just debit the money out of your Amazon account, and in 2 days or whatever, it'll turn up. And there was stories of parents putting them, say, just around the house, and then a child would go nuts and push it 400 times, and then 2 days later they would have a massive delivery of all these things that they just didn't expect to have. So I think that was a bit of a problem with it, but it's just an interesting thing of how, as an experiment, probably would have cost them millions of pounds, but it's again making the friction go away, speeding up the process, avoiding having to have any conscious thought about it. And you can see the similarity with here comes a coffee analogy because I'm thinking about espressos. The big coffee chains, they have full automatic coffee making machines where you just push buttons, and they'll spend a fortune, and I'm talking hundreds of thousands of pounds, to shave 2 seconds or 1 second off each coffee creation and order because they fulfill millions of them every day of every week. That time is really ultra valuable to them. So it's just, again, removing a little bit of friction. And if someone can get a cup of coffee or a beer or whatever really quickly, that again, there's less friction there, and you don't have enough time to catch yourself and think, actually, do I actually want to order this? Do I want to have that? And before you know it, you're holding whatever it may be, and the money's gone out of your account, never to be seen again until you earn some more. So that's quite a lot of brain related things. I mean, the other example of the speeding things up, removing friction. So I gave a negative one about the Amazon Dash buttons, but there was when e-commerce or buying things online started to become a big thing, there was this big US website, and I want to say it's Best Buy, but I'm not 1,000% sure on that. They created the checkout as guest button, which smoothed purchasing online massively. So instead of creating an account, putting in your address, telling us your name, putting in your bank details, you just check out as guest, fill in the automatic card details, and bam, you're done. And that increased the revenues of that company overnight by, I think it's a lot of millions of pounds. I don't recall the figure. Alex, is that something that's in your head or no?
Yeah, so it was $300 million over a year by the introduction of that button, and yeah, precisely not having to ask people to log in or to register for an account before they could complete a purchase. They could, yeah, you check out as a guest and then have the option to register at a later point. But yeah, let's call it the $300 million button is the colloquial term for it. But yeah, unbelievable piece of psychology, and I think just shows how removing friction can have such a massive impact on purchasing decisions. It's yeah, fascinating piece of psychology.
Can we use that to our advantage? Like, so removing friction in life can make us do things like form good habits that we would like to do. I mean, as a simple example of that, if I say wanted to go to the gym early morning, I would set my alarm to go off an hour earlier than usual. I'd put all my gym gear out, and if I'm awake at that point and I've had probably a cup of tea or an espresso at this rate, and I've got my gym gear on, I'm 1,000% more likely to go than if I have to actively think about that. So I do a lot of that in my life at the moment. I make things as seamless as possible because I know the same way that impulse spending is easy to do, not doing good behaviors is also really easy. So I have to then remove some of those barriers out of my life so I can get the good behavior in. And I have to add barriers so I can remove negative behaviors as well. I wonder if that's, I don't think it's just me. I mean, people have written books about habits. I mean, the one I'm thinking about is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is a fantastic book if you haven't read it. Alex, have you read that one, or is it on your non-impulse to buy Amazon list?
Yeah, there is another one on my non-impulse to buy list. But it's a really good question actually on almost flipping the psychology of how do you use it in your favor. And similar to you, I've got a couple of examples. One is I think automating savings and investments is a way, if you don't have to make a decision or consciously do anything in order to put money into an account, you just set up a direct debit into your pension, your ISA, or your savings account. It just comes straight out of your bank account. That's a really good way of removing friction for your benefit. And similarly, for one piece of effort at a weekend, I always take my lunch to work. I make a massive vegetable soup. I think it's like a 10-liter pan of soup, and I make 2 weeks worth of soup, freeze it, freeze portions, which I can then take out the following week, and then I take my soup. So creating that, doing that one piece of almost thought and taking an hour at the weekend produces a healthy lunch for me. All I have to do is make sure I take it out of the fridge before I go to work. I've then got healthy lunch, doesn't cost me anything. I then take out a decision for my life. And so it's a reverse, and it stops me then impulse buying expensive sandwiches or whatever else it is at Spitalfields Market opposite my office.
That's a really interesting thing and actually timely as well because I do something similar with I take different. This is going to sound a bit weird, but I take different cans of mixed beans, chickpeas, stuff like that into work, and I'll normally pair it with either couscous or rice or something like that because I don't want to then have to think about what am I going to have for lunch. I don't want to justify spending some of my salary on lunch because I think about it of if I go out and I spend on £10 or whatever, that's an hour, half an hour's worth of your time, and I've already spent some money going to work just in travel and getting there. So I want to keep as much of it as I can. But again, it removes a decision. I sit at the moment in a big shared office, and there's probably one, two, three, four, probably 12, 10 to 12 people who sit in it. And today, as I was eating my lunch, I overheard two of my colleagues talking about what they get for lunch. And one of them, they both established they didn't bring any lunch in and they're wondering whether to walk out and get some in town. And one of them said, I'll have a quick look at what Deliveroo or whatever other Uber Eats or whatever it is has. And they ended up buying, I think, McDonald's or something, I don't know. And I think the bill between both of them was something like £22 or something silly like that. Silly in my opinion. They might have got a lot of value from it, don't know. But if you think about the scenario, they're probably going to feel a bit of pressure from each other. They've got some work stress slash a to-do list and extra pressure from that. So it's very easy for them to go from I'll walk out and buy something to I'll have someone bring it to me and I'll spend some extra to make that happen. That kind of decision isn't something that I don't want to have to go through that and to have that battle in my own head because I'm probably going to lose. So the way I deal with that is I would obviously take lunch in with me, but it's just interesting to see other people make different decisions to you. And when you learn a bit more about how the brain works and how these impulse buys and spends can manifest over a normal day, because I don't think either of them thought in the morning, I'll Uber Eats a McDonald's in for lunch. How quickly that can happen. So Alex, is that something that you see? Are you the anomaly taking in 10 litres of soup? Or is everyone kind of a bit disciplined where you work, or is it a mix?
I would say I'm definitely the weird one that brings everyone lunch, and yeah, the my rationale for doing it is exactly as you said. I want to save as much of my income as I can, and it's an easy way for doing it for me. And also, I work just opposite Spitalfields Market, and I like walking around there. The food is amazing, but I just cannot comprehend spending £15 on my lunch. And I'm a big foodie. I really enjoy food, but all at the right time. I like to enjoy it when I'm relaxed and I'm not having to get back to work. So I think, yeah, I'm the strange one, but I've always been that no matter where I've worked. I think I've always taken my own food in, and yeah, I feel much better for doing it. So I think it might be worth an episode on food shopping and food planning, meal planning, batch cooking, because I think it could be quite valuable. Because I certainly find it. I've done it for several years now, and it's not saves a lot of money, but it reduces a lot of stress because I know exactly what I'm going to be having for dinner and when and what my lunch is going to be. You remove that thought process, and then you remove the need for impulse spending. And I think the example of the like Uber Eats and Deliveroo, it's never been so easy to get food delivered to. Like you literally don't have to do anything, and you can get some really good food delivered straight to your door. So yeah, I think that's something I think it'd be good to do a dedicated episode on actually.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing that probably happens around everyone all the time. I mean, I do a similar thing with my work clothing, so I want to minimize all and any decision fatigue that I can, especially in the mornings when I'm not very awake. So before I go to sleep at night, I'll always put my clothes out for the next day. For most of my working career, I've worn scrubs, or at least the top half is like a nursing tunic with big pockets and pens and a watch and stuff, and that I found really helpful because that's just what I would wear because that was my uniform. The job I'm in now, it's kind of wear your own clothes, so I sometimes feel like I then have to decide what I'm wearing the next day, and I'm not good at color coordination or whatever. And sometimes my wife will be like, why are you dressed like that?" And I'll just be like, "Well, it's too late now. I'm going to work." So, and sometimes I'm just wearing like all green, or all black, or all blue, four shades of blue, or whatever. But it doesn't bother me. But apparently that bothers other people. So I find it easier to minimize as much of that decision making as possible. I was also doing a little bit of maths about your kind of soup bringing and stuff. I haven't discounted for the cost of making soup or whatever, but for example, if you spend £5 per day on lunch, you do it 5 days a week, 40 weeks of the year. I know this is it's not going to be perfect because you have days off and you won't spend exactly five each time. But if you take that, it works out to be about £1,000 per year, which is, well, I think quite a lot. And then say you invest that at 8% for 20 years, it turns into £52,000, which if someone said to me, just bring your own lunch to work every day, and in 20 years I'll give you £52,000, I'd sign me up. I'll eat whatever I want to eat, but I'll make it at home to have that much money. I mean, 50,000 is a lot of money. It could be life changing to a lot of people. And that is the reality. You could be that much richer in 20 years just by making your own lunch.
Yeah, that's quite remarkable actually. I have to be honest, I've never done that math, so thank you for doing that. And I think it just goes to show the power of being, for a bit of organization and a bit of upfront planning, what it can do. And what I was going to touch on quickly is if people if people do find themselves succumbing to impulse buying and impulse spending, I've got a couple of tips which I've used, which I've found effective, and I wonder if Alex, you've also got some similar tips. But for me, I always think asking yourself some questions. So the whole idea is you're up against this machine that is designed by lots of highly paid people working around the clock to separate you from your money, and you want to be able to put some bumps in the road to make it harder for you to to buy. So, there's always the question, ask yourself, is it a want or is it a need? And if it's a want, you know, how does this fit in with my overall financial goals? And I think this is where having your own goals set up is is really important because it gives you something to reference against. And if this thing isn't going to be helping you achieve that, then I think it's one way of stopping that. My partner, she's got a really good uh she when she buys things online, she's got a good technique of whether or not to keep something, and she plays a game with herself called Cash or Keep, where she'll put the item out on the bed and then literally imagine the 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 cold hard cash sat next to it, and then make a call of would I rather have, would it be £20, £40, or whatever it is, or the dress or the top, and then that then influences her decision. And that certainly helped her. She probably went from a bit of a spendaholic maybe 5, 6 years ago. She had a no spend year last year on no clothes spending, and now she uses this technique to help really minimize the amount that she buys. There's always the thing of you can just leave a decision for 24 hours. So if you've got some impulse books in your basket, leave them in the basket for 24 hours, come back to it tomorrow. And things like, am I still going to be wanting this item 6 months from now? And so there's just questions. And if you can introduce these into a purchasing decision, I think it just helps slow down that process. And ultimately, it means that when you do go ahead and buy something, you've made the right decision and you're going to, love that item and look after it for a long time, rather than just it's an impulse. I bought it because it was on the shelf and it was on sale, and actually I don't like the color, and then it sits in the back of the wardrobe forever. So those are some of the techniques which I've implemented and I found very useful. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are, Alex.
I think those are both very good. There's a lot of people talk about leave it in your basket figuratively for 24 hours, not in an actual supermarket. I really like the idea of cash or keep. It just gives you a little bit of extra brain space and a bit more time to think about that decision. And you could go through and look at your current possessions and think, would I buy this today? Do I actually still need it? And if not, it's probably worth something. It could be worth something to someone else. So list it somewhere and have a bit more space in your house, reduce some more decision fatigue, and have a bit more cash. The main thing that I use on top of those is I work out how much something costs, and then I work out how much I earn per hour. As we've said before, we've talked about your true hourly rate by taking your wage, dividing it by however many hours you work, adding your commuting costs, any registrations like you have or anything like that, any other costs around work, and then figuring out whether the item is worth X amount of hours of your time. Could be 2 hours, 10 hours, 100 hours, who knows. So it can help frame that in a way that makes sense to you, and you can stop yourself making impulse purchases at that in that avenue. The other thing I've occasionally thought about is, say I want to buy something for £100, for example. I don't know what this mystery item is at this point, but if I do buy it, yeah, I'll have the item. Does it bring that much value to my life? Is it beneficial? Do I need it or do I want it? As Alex has said, if I were to just add that £100 to my investments and not spend it, in 10 years, it'll be worth £221, 20 years, 492, 30 years, 1,093. So is whatever I'm buying worth being that much poorer in the future? And that's invested at 8% compounded per year for those figures. And I wonder whether it can help people just catch that cycle of impulsive thinking that your brain's very good at. And marketing psychologists, they know that our brains are very good at that and they'll exploit it. So just give it a little bit of extra time. Run the idea by someone else, someone that you know and trust. Could also be a good idea to help avoid something like that. Automate your finances. If you don't have the money directly available, you can't spend it. It's always much harder to spend, and it again adds another barrier if you have to make a transfer. At the same time, really what our core message here is be intentional with your purchases. It's all about balance. Life is for living. Please don't think you can't buy whatever you need to buy to maintain a happy and healthy lifestyle. Just really think about the happiness that you get from it. Objects will be new objects for a short space of time, and then they'll just become objects. So think intentionally about what you are going to buy and what you're not. Think of how hard you've worked to earn that money. Think of what it could turn into if invested properly or wisely, as we've said. Is it worth the hours of your time? Leave it in your basket 24 hours before buying it, because often that impulsive thought will leave you and you'll come back to it and think, what on earth have I got that in there for? I definitely don't need that. And you'll save yourself that money that you could perhaps use to buy yourself a nice espresso or dinner, depending on how much it costs. You can also play cash or keep that Alex has discussed with us. So it's something that being mindful of our own brains, of how we think around impulses is an important thing to do. You can always ask us any questions as well. You can ping us an email at nursingyourwaytowealth@gmail.com and we'll talk you through things like that. And really just thank you for listening. Appreciate you spending the last 36 minutes with us. And we'll see you next time. None of what we discuss on the show is to be considered financial or health advice, and we recommend you always do your own research or consult an independent financial advisor or a doctor when making your financial or health decisions.